Hey, had a couple days rest now. Wonderful. Should have turned my phone off, however. I just made a hilarious posting on Instagram. At least I thought it was hilarious. Um, I literally, and this is no exaggeration, if I didn't have to sleep and eat and, do countless other things like garbage laundry, could overnight make like 4 or 5,000 videos on metaphysics alone. I mean that literally. I translate ancient Greek. I translate ancient Pali, which is a type of Prakrit language. By the way, the oldest texts in India are not Sanskrit. I translate Romanized Sanskrit too, by the way. The oldest texts in India, specifically the Magadha Valley, which is the epicenter, north-central India, is the epicenter of basically 99% of ancient Indian metaphysics. I translate, for nearly 20 years now, I've been translating Pali, specifically the five Nikayas, pre-sectarian texts, long before the Theravadins and the Sarvastivadins and the Mahayanas came around, countless, many hundreds of years. Actually, the Sarvastivadins. By the way, all those yellow-robed monks you see in Southeast Asia, Ceylon, Burma, Thailand, Vietnam, those are Theravadins. They used to be called the Sarvastivadins, which translated means this is all there is, ism, which kind of sounds crazy, right? It basically means atomism, which of course is not what original Buddhism taught. And of course, Buddhism, of course, is a completely made up bullshit term, excuse my language. The only time that the historical Siddhartha Gautama actually called his teachings anything is in Samyutta Nikaya 5.4, and he called it Brahmayana, Path to the Absolute. Literally, Path to the Absolute. I'm going to give you, and this is not about Buddhism, by the way, but I've been translating it now for nearly 2 decades. This is, by the way, one book of translation of A.H. Armstrong, a fat, stupid a creationist, and this is the referred text, and it's a multiple volume of the Nine Enneads translation of Plotinus. It's completely nonsensical. It's ridiculous. This is someone who not only doesn't believe in monism, Neoplatonic monism, which is just rehashed Platonism and Pythagoreanism, specifically the Nine Enneads of Plotinus. It's nonsensical, even in some of Armstrong's own writings. He says he doesn't understand why Plotinus says. I mean, it's blatantly clear to me. I mean, if he's still alive today, I would love to have a nice debate with him, but he's dead. But I'm going to give you some references, some ancient Pali terms, and there's thousands of things like this. There's thousands of such things in ancient Greek also. Some things are untranslatable, but everything that, and by the way, I inherited the works of Dr. Anandakitish Kumaraswamy. His son gave me the rights to his works. He said, the only condition was that I can't sell them. His son used to be a cardiac surgeon. He died many years ago, but I used to talk to him on the phone. And he famously said that Buddhism today is most famous for everything it originally never taught. And that's actually a very, very succinct statement and completely accurate. And this is what happens when heretical, sectarian, literalists, and non-metaphysically minded people translate and interpret these texts. By the way, everything as far as modern Buddhism is concerned, and I'm just using this as an example, comes from early English and European travelers to India, and they were taught by the yellow-robed, like I said, all those yellow-robed people in Ceylon, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam. Those are the Sarvastivadins, now called the Theravadins. They said, well, this is the original teachings. The only problem is that those sectarianists didn't exist until the 3rd century CE. And the Nikayas are actually mentioned. I think it's on the 5th pillar of King Ashok, which dates to like 250 BCE, long before the Theravadins existed. It literally refers to the Pancha Nikayas, the 5 Nikayas. So these are pre-sectarian texts, and before these sectarian divisions occurred. Yet they were interpreted the atomistic and soul-denying scum. And that's what they are. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's true. I mean, I can't whitewash it any other way They're soul-denying atomists and nihilists. They actually taught their early, like the people in the Polytech Society, except for Caroline Augustus Foley Rees Davis, which you don't know and don't care about. All the British and the Europeans, they believed the gobbledygook and BS that the yellow-robed monks in Ceylon specifically, which is where a lot of the British people went, oh yeah, we got these old Theravadins here, they've been around for, you know, well over 1,000 years. They're obviously teaching us what original Buddhism, and of course it's absolute BS. The five Nikayas, for example, which are pre-sectarian texts, don't say any such thing. And by the way, the world, not my opinion, it's not an egotistical statement. There's absolutely nobody in the world that knows more about the term anatta than I do. I know all 576 occurrences. I know its contextual use. It is also found in the writings of Sri Sankaracharya in the Upadisahasri Vivechudamuni of Advaita Vedanta. And it's also found in a few places in the Principal Upanishads. Yet modern Buddhists think that this term is a denial of the soul. Of course, it's never used that way contextually. A, B, C, X, Y, Z are not X is not a denial of X. I could get into a long spiel on this, but I mean, there's a few different things where I want to talk about examples of how metaphysics is perverted by sectarian and nihilistic scum. Specifically, we're talking about physicalists and atomists who actually take it upon themselves, and most of them are academic stooges and morons that take it upon themselves to translate these ancient texts, and they do transliterations, and they're completely dead of content. When you read them, a lot of them, and like I said, I've been doing this for decades, literally. When you read them in the English, it's like, what the hell, this is and this is also the same thing you find in ancient Egyptian. And we had the Rosetta Stone, which gave us an insight into how to translate ancient Egyptian, but well, then you like read the Book of the Dead, a translation into English. I mean, it's nonsensical bullshit. I mean, it's literally nonsensical. And this exists in the works of Plotinus. It exists in all the five Nikayas. There's only a few people that said, you know, this is not what these texts say. One of them was the most prolific Pali translator who ever lived, was C.A.F. Rees Davids. But I mean, myself, you know, having spent so many years looking into and I translated the entire Dhammapada in the Pali, for example. I translated part of the Sutta Nipata. I translated huge portions and been over in the Nikayas over and over and over again. Let me give you some perfect examples of how hardcore, sublime metaphysical texts get literally shit upon by intellectual inferiors, nihilists, atomists, and scumbags. Here's a perfect word, and like I said, there's thousands of examples like this in ancient Pali alone. The term Tathagata. If you read any English translation of that term, it'll say, thus gone one. It's like, well, what sort of nonsensical BS is that? When you're translating something, you could translate it literally. If you want to translate it literally, it almost says that, thus gone one. Well, that's some nonsensical BS. Of course, this is very true in ancient Greek, where many terms, such as the nous or euristostaias, episteme, there's countless ancient Greek terms which are literally untranslatable. And of course, the contextual premise of where you're talking about the nous, oh my God. I mean, there's 1,000 different ways to translate. Depends on the context. But I mean, I don't want to get into reductionism, which is what a lot of translators do. Is like, this can be interpreted a million different ways. Tathagata literally translates, agata means having arrived at. The term broken apart, the second half of the term Tathagata, is a, meaning having gone to, but it means you've arrived at. In other words, your destination. So agata is not gone to. When you say gone, you were talking travel or implications of going somewhere. Like he's on his way to Philadelphia. Agata means arrived at. Means you've gone and arrived at. Tat is in reference to Brahman. It's also like tattvamasi. This is also the basis of this statement, which anybody that knows Sanskrit knows what tattvamasi means. That thou art. That, of course, is in reference to the absolute, and the ancient Greek would be agathon. What Tathagata literally translated as, and it's you can't translate it literally. You have to translate something for meaning, okay? Literal translation, of course, is nonsensical. What do you mean, thus gone one? I mean, what sort of nonsensical statement is that? It means someone who's arrived at the absolute, is standing in the absolute. Not literally, but in terms of metaphysics or spiritually, one is standing in at the absolute. So that is what the term Tathagata means. And there are many contextual definitions where Tathagata is equated to Suvimutta Chittasa, which means a thoroughly liberated nous. Chitta is a reference to the nous. Also, too, I know you've seen this before. This is how hardcore metaphysics gets bastardized and literalized. And this has happened way over nearly 1800 years ago when Mahayana sprang up. By the way, all the Tibetans and Chinese Mahayanists and the idiots that are practicing Zen, they're Mahayanists. I mean, all that sectarian garbage sprang up long after Gautama died and his ashes were burned on a funeral pyre. You've seen people spinning the wheels. This is huge in Tibet. They'll have these big silver wheels with, holy writings on them in Devanagari. And you'll have these stupid people spinning the wheel. Because the literal translation of Cakravartin from the ancient Pali is transliterated as wheel turner, but it doesn't actually say that. And you actually have to understand ancient metaphysical symbolism. It's referring to the unmoved axle, and of course in the case of ancient vehicles, the axle is not moving. In the case of a modern vehicle, the axle actually moves. It's literally referring to that which spins the wheel. So Cakravartin is the exact same thing as saying Tathagata, someone who has arrived or stands at the absolute. In the case of the absolute is at the center of the wheel of becoming, Bhavanubhava in ancient Pali, for example. So you're referring to the axle, or the axis mundi, right? But well over the earliest occurrence of this bastardization, which is what it is, by mental midgets, nihilists, and just intellectual scumbags, is, well, this says wheel turner. So long ago in ancient India, when the Mahayanas sprang up around the 5th century CE, i.e. AD, they transliterated this as wheel turner. And so now you've got in ancient Tibet, all these people spinning wheels, and they think it has some sort of significance. That's just nothing other than a ritualistic BS. It has nothing to do with the connection to the original text does not say wheel turner. It says, is that, i.e. the axle, the unmoved axle. In the case of a chariot, ancient vehicles, the axle didn't move. It was made out of wood. Is that which turns the wheel. Okay? And of course in ancient vehicles, the axle isn't turning the wheel, and you got horses pulling the chariot or the cart, and of course, but you're talking about the unmoved absolute, the center of all things, right? So it doesn't say wheel turner. But for the past 1,500 years plus, you have this bastardization by intellectual inferiors. And this is why, too, when you go to look at these Dharma centers and all these Tibetan nonsense centers, they're spinning wheels, I'm spinning the wheel. I mean, this is what happens when stupid people get a hold of hardcore metaphysical texts. I mean, it's just absolutely nonsensical. It's the definition of stupidity, literally. And there's 1,000 examples of this. The biggest one, of course, in the Nikayas is the term Atan, or Atman. By the way, the most important terms in ancient Egyptian are also the exact same terms in ancient Prakrit. The term Chit or Chitta, in ancient Egyptian, ancient Prakrit. The term Atan or Atman, exactly the same thing. Anyway, there's never a denial in the soul in any of the 5 Nikayas. The term anatta is only in reference to 22 things. Rupa, the most common Pali phrase in the 5 Nikayas, for example, is isakaya namisata. The body, or namarupa anattati. The psychophysical is not my soul. And yet this very term, and of course, is Vachakota in Semini Nikaya 3.196 said, anatta. What does anatta mean? Rupa anatta, Veda anatta, Sananatta, Sankara anatta, Isaka namisata, which mainly means the forms, feelings, perceptions. All these things are not my soul. Now, if I said, you know, in your house, like, that's not an elephant, that's not an elephant, that's not an elephant, that's not an elephant, would you stupidly, like a moron, think, well, this guy says elephants don't exist? No. No, you had a person that said, that's not an elephant, that's not an elephant. You know, this fallacy of composition. Of course, if that were the case, if Buddhism actually, original Buddhism, and was originally called Brahmayana, Samyutta Nikaya 5.4, if Buddhism taught that there was no soul, then there would not be 10 billion occurrences in the five Nikayas. That's not the soul, that's not the soul, that's not the soul, that's not the soul. No, he would literally say, there is no soul. It's over with. Hey, no, soul. No, there is no soul. No, there is no soul. There's no such occurrence in the five Nikayas. Absolutely none. I've debated this now for 15 plus years with some of the stupidest people on earth, including the most famous Pali translator, and he's not famous at all. He's a Theravadin, a yellow-robed nihilist. His name is Bhikkhu Bodhi. Actually, he's this English dude with like a chocolate addiction. He's this bald-headed monk. I'm bald-headed too, not a monk. But everybody reads his translations, and it reads like Buddhism. If you were to read these bullshit translations, and that's exactly what they are, by him and other people, you would think the earliest Buddhism is just a form of moralism. And I'd say, oh, it's about acting good and being good. No, it doesn't teach any of that in the original text. It actually teaches transcendence. Literally, transcendence from the psychophysical, isakai, namisata, the most repeated phrase in ancient Prakrit over and over. This form, this psychophysical, is not the soul. There's like 10,000 appellations of the soul. Atavasrati, you know, the soul is charioteer. Atahi atanonati, kohi nato perasiya. Now the way they get around that, instead of the actual translation, is that the soul is the refuge. What else could it be? They transliterate that into a type of moralistic, nuanced bullshit. They transliterate it, and it's really an incorrect translation, is you yourself are your best refuge. In other words, like, you should rely on yourself. It's like saying you should rely on yourself. And that's not what the original text says at all. Absolute bullshit. By the way, there's absolutely nobody on this earth, and I'm not being egotistical, that can debate this topic. I've destroyed, absolutely destroyed in debate, the best Pali translators that exist. There's nobody on this earth that knows more about the term anatta, its contextual appearance, where it occurs, how it occurs. Nobody. Nobody knows more about that topic than I do. Nobody. If you want to debate me on it, bring it. I'll put you on speakerphone and we'll do a live video recording. Find the best Pali translator you want. I will destroy them. I mean that literally. I will destroy them. It's about facts, you know? It's about being logical. It's like, what do the texts actually say? But this is what happens when scumbags get a hold of text. I mean, this translation, we got the Greek over here and the English over here, and it's a multiple volume by H. Armstrong, now dead. I mean, there are multiple translations of Plotinus, but I mean, you can never get what it's actually saying without being able to read the ancient Greek. And let me tell you what, the ancient Greek of Plotinus, not only is it ancient Greek, it's ancient Greek metaphysics. And not only is it ancient Greek metaphysics, it's ancient Greek metaphysics in shorthand. That is the reason why 2 of the 5 translators into English of the works of Plotinus were suicidal perpetually. They're going, oh my God, I'm never going to finish this shit, because it is literally the original ancient Greek. So it's not just ancient Greek. People don't get, so what's wrong? It's just Greek. No, it's ancient Greek. And not only is it ancient Greek, it's ancient Greek shorthand. It's ancient Greek shorthand of a very nuanced, hardcore monistic metaphysics. I mean, it is like an enigma wrapped inside of a conundrum, and so, you know that old saying. Anyway, this is how metaphysics gets perverted. It gets turned into atomistic moralism. It's like original Buddhism was about being good to your neighbor and petting your dog and doing the right thing and ethically, you know, relying on yourself. It didn't teach that at all. Absolute BS. It's like, well, that's your opinion. Of course, I used to get that all the time. It's like, no. When you actually are debating what something teaches, everything is sola scriptura, which means that the original text is the point of reference, you know? It's like, let's go to the original. Not my opinions, not your opinions. Let's go to the original and see what it says. And if I'm right, you know, you're going to have to concede. People don't know how to debate anymore. It's like, you want to have a debate? Let's have a debate on this topic, because I've been translating Pali now for nearly 20 years. And if anybody wants to have a debate on that topic, I'll destroy you. I've been doing that for ages. I mean, people, it's okay. It's like, you know, that's fine. I don't care about your beliefs. Let's talk about what the text actually says. They literally think that original Buddhism, and if I'm going to give you an analogy of what original Buddhism, current Buddhism is like, it would be if, like, current Christianity, like, denied Jesus. Like, that guy never existed. Christianity has nothing to do with Jesus. Which is, like, crazy, right? That's like, that's the whole basis of Christianity, is Jesus, right? Modern Buddhism, analogously, it would be like a Christian completely denying Jesus. It's like, what do you mean there's no soul? Yeah, there's no soul in Buddhism. Yeah, there's no soul. It's like, are you nuts? Atavasarati, kohinato perez. The soul is the only refuge. What else could it be? I mean, that's what the original text. Well, that's your interpretation. No, that's not my interpretation. That's a fact. The only thing that actually transcends the psychophysical is the soul. The only refuge is the soul. The only term that is given the appellation of Nitya, which means permanence in doctrine, is the soul. It's like, I'm not going to debate your opinions or my opinions or beliefs. Let's talk about what the texts actually say. And what I say they say are actually found there. And what you think they say are not found there. And of course, this is why religion is bullshit. I'm not interested in religion. I'm interested in metaphysics. I always have been. Religion, of course, is secularized metaphysics. It's the plaything of fools. But if you want to give you a bit of an intro into metaphysics, that's like a little tiny intro. So I hope you liked it. If you didn't, well, that's fine too. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, please click the link below. Tell me how much you hate me. Bye.